Hello, my name is Stephen Wolanski. I am in the School of Education of Liberty University. Today I will be presenting on positive behavior supports in special education, linking research to practice through evidence based leadership. So today I will be presenting about positive behavior supports, or PBS, as an evidence based framework that promotes positive student behavior, academic success, and inclusive learning environments. This presentation reviews the policy foundations of PBS. It examines current research, discusses leadership implications, and explores how biblical principles support compassionate and equitable research practices. So, the objectives for this presentation are to define what positive behavior supports are, explain the policy and the legal foundations relevant to PBS, to review the current research findings on PBS's effectiveness, examine the outcomes associated with PBS implementation, discuss the leadership implications for evidence based PBS practice, and to connect PBS principles to a biblical worldview. So, PBS is a comprehensive systems approach rather than simply a classroom management strategy. So, current research demonstrates that effective implementation depends almost solely on evidence based leadership, on collaboration, and continuous improvement to create equitable outcomes for all learners through this PBS system. So, what is positive behavior supports? So, it is a proactive, research based framework. PBS teaches and reinforces positive behaviors using data driven decision making and functional behavior assessments, or FBA, to support all learners proactively. Promoting inclusive practices and positive school climate, so PBS prioritizes skill and development over punishment and fosters inclusive environments and supports social emotional growth for students with diverse needs. So, PBS focuses on preventing behavioral challenges through explicit instruction, positive reinforcement, and consistent expectations. Rather than reacting to misconduct, educators teach appropriate behaviors while using data to determine the effectiveness of the interventions and make informed decisions. So, policy foundations for PBS. IDEA mandates functional behavioral assessments, or FBA, and behavioral intervention plans, BIP, for students with behavioral challenges. The least restrictive environment, LRE, supports inclusive placement and positive behavior practices. A multi-tiered systems of support frameworks integrate PBS principles across all levels. The emphasis is on prevention, early intervention, and continuous data monitoring. Policy frameworks require proactive, individualized, and equitable behavioral supports for students with disabilities. So, the federal law requires that schools address behaviors that interfere with learning using positive interventions whenever appropriate. PBS is centered around positive interventions. PBS aligns closely with this IDEA requirement and serves as a behavioral component within the multi-tiered system, supporting inclusive educational environments. So, the evidence-based framework for PBS. It's a multi-tiered system, and at tier 1, we see universal supports. These are proactive school-wide strategies for all students, promoting positive behavior, clear expectations, and safe, inclusive learning environment. At tier 2, we see the targeted interventions, where we see small groups, evidence-based supports for students at risk, using data monitoring and structured behavioral strategies to address emerging needs. And then at Tier 3, even more intensive individualized interventions, comprehensive individualized supports for students with significant behavioral needs, guided by the FBA and tailored behavior intervention plans. So PBS, it utilizes this three-tiered prevention model. Most students see the greatest growth and success from Tier 1 with the universal supports, but that affects the larger population. And then while targeted and individualized interventions provide increasing levels of assistance based on the student's need and their ongoing progress monitoring as we move up to Tier 2 and to Tier 3. Evidence-based PBS practices. So we have key strategies that are grounded in research to support positive behavior in special education settings. These evidence-based practices are designed to promote positive outcomes for all students through proactive, data-informed, and equity-focused approaches. Some of these include explicit teaching of expected behaviors, positive reinforcement and recognition systems, FBA guiding behavior intervention plans, database decision-making and monitoring, family and community partnerships, ongoing professional learning, equity-focused approaches, collaborative team structures, progress monitoring at every tier, culturally responsive practices, preventative, proactive strategies, and restorative relationship building. So the current research emphasizes that successful PBS depends on continuous professional development from the educators and from the leadership, collaboration between the schools, the students, and the families, and culturally responsive implementation of these practices. These practices improve consistency while ensuring interventions meet the diverse needs of the students and just meeting them at the different stages that they are experiencing. Outcomes from PBS research. So we have academic achievement and engagement. PBS implementation is linked to measurable gains in academic achievement and increased student attendance, engagement, and motivation in inclusive learning environments. We've especially noticed with student attendance and engagement, just in general, when there are less negative consequences for engagement and for being part of what's going on in the school, it just leads to more cooperation with the students. That being said, there's also works on social emotional development. So students receiving PBS supports demonstrate enhanced social emotional skills, improve peer relationship, and greater self-regulation across school settings. And then teacher effectiveness and school culture. So educators report improved confidence and instructional efficacy with PBS, and it fosters positive, inclusive school culture that supports all learners equitably. So again, the educators actually benefit from this because of increased professional development, increases their knowledge base across all tiers, and it allows for the students to have a better learning environment. So studies consistently demonstrate that PBS improves academic and behavioral outcomes by increasing instructional time and strengthening relationships among the students, the teachers, and the families of the students. Effective implementation also contributes to safer and more supportive school environments. Leadership implications for PBS. So, building capacity. When we talk about building capacity, we talk about you want to build collaborative leadership teams to guide the PBS efforts. Uh, this should not be all put on just, say, like the principal or one or two key people. In general, they like to build teams that you could break down the size of what they are in charge of. You want to allocate resources strategically to support at all tiers. So a good way to look at it is like at each tier, there may be a team that is in charge of handling what that tier is responsible for. Lead professional development and instructional coaching, and engage the families and community as active partners in their students' learning. Don't look at it as solely the job of the educators, or like it's the educators versus the students and their families. It needs to be collaborative, working together. Sustaining the implementation. You want to ensure that the implementation fidelity through monitoring and feedback. Use the data to inform the decisions and to promote equitable practices. Foster a positive school climate aligned with PBS values, and maintain leadership commitment over time. So leadership clearly plays a large role in sustaining PBS implementation. Recent research suggests that successful leaders actively support coaching, collaboration, and continuous evaluation to ensure long-term effectiveness and equitable outcomes across the school community. The school leaders, in general, they are the main driving force behind what the school culture is, whether the school culture is going to be accepting of these positive behavioral supports, or if they're going to be focused more on like traditional learning environments. So it starts at the top, and you have to have systemic practices in place. Some challenges in implementation of PBS. So some barriers that we might have would be there needs to be a comprehensive training program that is for all the staff and for the leaders. We can't just tell them that we're implementing something and then expect them to just understand and go along with it. There needs to be some type of training that comes along with implementing these types of things. We want maintaining fidelity without rigidity. So again, this is supposed to be fostering a collaborative environment. So we want to be faithful to what PBS is supposed to be without being so rigid to the plan that we don't take into account individual circumstances, or that we're not making it inclusive for all students, regardless of what their culture or what their home situation might be. Resistance to change among the stakeholders. So I'm sure a lot of us have run into these situations where, there are people who are resistant to change. They may look at something and say, it's worked this way before, why change it now? Our response to that usually is, if there's room for improvement, why should we not be always seeking to improve? And then obviously limited resources and competing priorities. Again, anytime you have a big change like this, you may run into issues with staffing or resource shortage, and there may be priorities based around other policies that may be in place already. Again, it kind of starts from the top, and you need to see systemic just policies put into place that will help alleviate some of those competing priorities. And some considerations, you could be balancing flexibility along with the evidence-based protocols. Evidence-based protocols are there because they have been proven to show that this is the way things that will work, but at the same time, excuse me, at the same time, you need to remain flexible to everybody's individual needs and to the different circumstances that you may run into. Sustaining leadership commitment over time. Again, policy change. You're going to see people that may have issues with it. Also, there's a potential that you train people how to do this, and then for whatever reason, they move on, they get promoted, they leave to other areas, and then you have to continue to keep a group of people trained up that knows how to do this. So you need the continuous professional development, which the mandatory training would be part of the professional development. And then ensuring equitable implementation across all student groups. So recent research shows that while PBS continues to evolve, schools often struggle with sustaining the high quality implementation. A lot of times they start off very strong and then it tapers off over time, and then it just becomes like a check the box type of thing. So according to Chan and Pally 2024, they emphasize leadership development as essential for building future PBS capacity. And then Quinn 2025 cautions that maintaining meaningful relationships should remain central as the systems expand. Moving on to a biblical worldview. So, PBS reflects biblical principles by recognizing the inherent worth of every student and by emphasizing compassion, restoration, and respectful relationships. Christian educational leadership seeks to balance accountability with grace while supporting each student's development. We can see this in different scriptures. So we have in Genesis 1:27, it speaks to the dignity of every student. While all humans are created in God's image, affirming inherent dignity and worth of every student, PBS honors this truth by treating each learner with respect and individualized support. Then we see in Colossians 3:12, compassion in practice. It says, "Clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, and patience." PBS reflects these virtues through restorative relationships, belonging, and a culture of growth aligned with a biblical call to serve and to uplift one another. Some recommendations for the practice. So implement PBS with fidelity and conduct ongoing program evaluations for continuous improvement. The goal is continuous improvement, so they know implementation of this is not a finished product right off the bat. There is evidence-based practices and evidence-based research that is out there, but this is by no means a finished product and is not expected to be that as soon as you implement this, that you're getting everything done perfectly. But through consistent evaluation of the program, there can be consistent improvement to the point where this could be something, as you continue to research it, would continue to get closer to something that could be a finished product. We're going to strengthen professional learning and coaching models to build staff capacity and confidence, and foster strong family and community partnerships while applying equity-focused supports to meet diverse learner needs. So, current research recommends sustained professional development, collaborative leadership, and continuous evaluation to ensure long-term PBS success. Equity-focused implementation should remain a priority for improving the outcomes for all students across all tiers, and not focus on groups, but working across all groups, including special education, including traditional learning students, and for cultural backgrounds as well. So, in conclusion, we see decades of research that have validated PBS's effectiveness in special education settings. PBS improves behavioral, academic, and social emotional outcomes for its students. It supports inclusive education aligned with IDEA and with the multi-tiered student frameworks. It promotes equitable practices and positive, affirming school culture, reflects biblical principles of dignity, compassion, and belonging, and leaders are called to champion evidence-based, student-centered practices. PBS demonstrates how evidence-based leadership can transform school culture and to improve outcomes for students with disabilities. So, current research reinforces that effective implementation requires collaboration, strong leadership, and ongoing commitment to equitable practices. Here are my references, and that concludes my presentation for today. Thank you very much.